Recording. Awesome. Well, thank you guys, everybody, for joining. Once in a while, I'm going to look over and let people in, but once we let Mike get started here, we're going to let him roll, and we're in for a huge treat. There are people that pay a lot of money to have Mike come and speak for them, and we are very thankful and very pleased, and just gosh, it's a great thing. We thank you for that, Mike. We'll get to that in just a minute here, but couple of things I like to make sure that everybody knows. First of all, thank you guys, all of you, for joining. I mean, what a great group. And right now we're at 24. That's a good number. And we continue to do these. Oh, here comes another one. So we continue to do these to help the stroke survivors out there. And I've done many different stroke survivor meetings. I've been on a lot of them, and we've got a great group here. And I just want you all to be proud of yourselves because you guys are showing that you're interested in getting better and interested in continuing to grow. And that's what it's all about, right? Life is about that. And so I'm just very proud of each and every one of you guys so much. We appreciate you all so much for being here. And there's Beth. Hey, Beth, how are you?
Hey, good. I'm trying to make you bigger, and I can't.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
Oh, I do. Hey, Keith, but I can't.
Yeah. And there's Marcia. Marcia, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Oh, doing great. What's the weather like back east?
It was 70 degrees today.
Oh, don't tell me that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not, because it's been really cold lately.
Yeah, okay. I was being facetious. We had it last week, so who am I kidding?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get on with this. And again, if anybody has questions, which they will have, and I know Mike's going to open this up for some question and answer, and that's where we really grow. That's where we get the most benefit. So we're so thankful to have him. I tell you guys, I'll in a minute, but please, if you can, either raise your hand physically and wave it, or raise it on here. And I apologize up front because occasionally I'll miss the little hand sign, but I try my best to notice it. And if I'm missing you, let me know. And I like to take turns. I like to try to get everybody who can ask questions to do that, because that way we get a good round event and we don't have just any one specific handling all the questions and stuff. Hey, Gunnar, how are you, buddy?
Aloha.
Good seeing you.
Good to be seen. Better
You're
to be
good.
seen than to be viewed.
That was pretty good. And there's Michelle Humphrey. How are you doing, Michelle? Good seeing you. So, okay, let's get on with this. So, our guest today is a man I met through Jim Patterson, actually. Jim and Mike are fairly good friends. Mike is just a great physical therapist that we have the honor of having him on here, frankly. He speaks all around the world. Gosh, a week or two ago when him and I were conversing, he was somewhere else, and he'll share that with you guys. I had a stroke too, so I don't remember everything, Mike. But anyway, it's so good to have you. Hey, let's see. I'll just read some of this. He's spoken all around the world, has built quite a following, as well as a huge business helping stroke warriors. So again, the president of Stroke Awareness Oregon, Jim, is a patient of Mike's, and Jim has told me many times he's shown incredible results. Mike is a board-certified neurologic clinical specialist. He has so many initials behind his name, it's hard to describe them all, really. He's been chosen as a clinician of the year for many different professional organizations for physical therapists, done TED Talks. He's a great speaker. He's just an all-around fantastic guy, really. And he's going to present for us today. I wanted to just say a quick story. Alicia brought it up. Back in 2022, we had a luncheon for Stroke Awareness Oregon, and Mike came on as our main speaker for that. And so one of the things I noticed was that here Mike is, he's dressed, professionally, he's doing this, and yet he had sneakers on. And I never said anything to him, but I thought later about that. And Mike, that's got to be because you know how important physical therapy is. And I was just thinking about that, and that shows me that you lead by example, not just your words. So having said all that, it's my pleasure to welcome you today, Mike, and let's give him a round of applause, everybody.
Yay!
Here, here.
Keith, thank you. I'll wait for you. Are you in a good position to turn the host over to me and I'll screen share then?
Yes, let's see.
Perfect.
So go to share. Whoop. Did I just mess up something? Oh,
You're just sharing your screen. That's okay. If you make me host, then I'll share.
and so I go to,
If you go to my icon and then click on the little 3 ellipses that come up, 3 dots at the top of mine, you can do that. If it doesn't give you that option, go into your host room, to your waiting room where you were admitting people, and then
Here we
go to
go.
me and make me a co-host. Did you get it?
I'm just going to make you the host.
Perfect. Yep, that's good. And then I see other people admitting, and so I'm actually able to admit them now too, and that's not a problem while I speak. That's easy to do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure, my pleasure. Keith, I'm going to jump right off of your introduction, and I'm going to one-up you here today. Okay, you ready for this? Is everybody ready for this? Okay. All right. I'm going to invert my computer for just a second and show you what I'm doing while I'm seated here getting ready to talk to you guys. Okay? So I'm biking actually right now. Can you guys see that okay?
That's awesome.
I gotta stay active, otherwise you wouldn't be able to tolerate me. All right, here we go. That gives us a nice lighthearted start off. And let me tell you, I am that lighthearted of an individual, and I really want to ensure that everyone that wants to speak gets an opportunity to engage. I want you to take Keith's invitation, interrupt me at any time. I am leaving time at the end to interact with all of you. And I'm also sharing my email address with you personally. So if any of you don't feel that you're capable of asking a question or don't feel that you want to ask a question, you can come directly to me after. And this is, not something where you have to email me within the next week. Whenever it comes up, if you feel like you want to ask a question, I will respond right back to you. And there are people on this Zoom call that know I will respond right back too. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen and show you my presentation that I've got to interact with all of you today. And you all should be able to see that now. Perfect. It sounds as though maybe there's one attendee that's unmuted, and we may be getting feedback of me twice. Is that right? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. All right,
Yeah,
it sounds better now. Okay, we're good. All right, so now we'll go into the presentation mode and we will see exactly what we've got entered here today. And I am going to admit a couple of people while we're at it. There we go. We got Ramona and Greg just came in. Okay, so what I would love to cover with all of you today is what to expect in rehabilitation, your interactions with professionals of PTOT, speech, physicians, nurses, and their colleagues, neuropsychologists, and more, as well as what to expect in your recovery. Now, some of you have had your stroke recently. Some of you are caregivers for persons that have sustained a stroke. Some of you have had a stroke years in the past, and others of you have had multiple strokes. However, and whenever you have come to this position, what I'm going to talk about today will have relevance for your situation. And I want you to hold me accountable to that so you can ask me questions that make our time together your time. All right, so what can I expect? I almost thought about titling this, What Can I Expect? When I'm expecting type of things, but I think this is a better way of stating it. Keith already introduced me and gave us a little bit of a background for me. If you want a little bit more, here's another just little info bio here. You can take a screenshot of that, or I can send you these handouts. My email is very easy to remember and very easy to take down. It's just my first name at firstnamelastname.com. So it's just Mike at MikeStuder.com. And it's just 1DDERSTUDER.com. So Keith, to answer your question, when we spoke by email, I was in Denmark and moving to Germany to lecture. Then the next day had already been in Stockholm, Sweden. I've had the blessing, as he mentioned, to present throughout the nation and throughout the world and get an opportunity to actually work with individuals while I'm doing those presentations. And that's probably the most significant thing to me, is just being able to directly impact someone in front of colleagues across the world so they can see in 45 minutes you can make a difference. In an hour's time, you can get to know someone and impact their life. So that gives us a really good jumping off point for today's effort. I want to start off in this effort to cover rehabilitation, recovery of stroke, to look at a timeline of what I intend to express to you today. So we're going to talk about the timing of recovery. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens in the brain dynamically, what is being rehabilitated. And after that, we're going to talk about what you should expect from your providers in rehabilitation. And then we'll wrap up by talking about exercise and physical activity, and really, when do you need the structured efforts and time and expertise of a physical, an occupational, or a speech therapist, and when can you do exercise on your own, or a personal trainer, athletic trainer, maybe helping some of you. And let's just open up that entirety of the conversation. So that's what we'll do. And just to reiterate, I do plan to leave time at the end of all of that to dialogue with all of you. Let's do the first part first. Let's debunk some myths about recovery after stroke. So ask yourself the rhetorical question that I've got for you listed here. Can I still recover more than 6 months after my stroke? How many of you feel like, and you can raise your hand, nod, whatever, how many of you feel like it's possible to still recover more than 6 months after a stroke? And I'm seeing some hands there. That's great. Does anyone want to suggest that that's not possible? Let me tell you something. When I graduated from physical therapy school, I went to school in the 1980s. Okay, I've been doing this for a bit. At that point, 6 months was expected to be the utmost time frame that someone could expect to recover within. After that, in the early 2000s, we lengthened that to a year. And many of you, even contemporary, now, if you had a stroke 1 or 2 years ago, you might have heard the same thing. Well, you've had a stroke and it's been a year ago. You should be expecting that's all you're going to get back. Scientific studies that have mapped out the human brain, then engaged people more than 5 years after stroke, then remapped them after engaging in aggressive rehab. Again, 5 years, they're done with rehab, they image the brain, they map out the brain, they engage in rehab, then they remap out the brain and they see the brain has made positive changes. That's just what's been studied is 5 years. We don't know that there's limits beyond that. And it would be difficult to expect that there's any body reason or physiologic reason for it to be 10 years. If it's more than 5 years, there's nothing that changes in that meantime. So what do we need to change the brain? We'll definitely get to that point. And I see a question, I'm going to get to that too. How do I recover and make gains years later? I'd like to invite some of you that feel compelled to maybe go ahead and add something in the chat right now or unmute and tell me, how do you think a person recovers years, plural, after a stroke? I'm going to look in the chat room and see what we've got here. Ramona says her audio isn't working. However, she's posed a question. I definitely believe that after 4 years, I've continued to see improvements. Ramona, thank you for your testimony to that as well. Would anyone like to try to answer the question, what does it take to improve more than 4 years later? Oh, here we go. Here's something. Okay, Keith says a person recovers by wanting to and showing willingness, so it takes motivation. Gunnar says he's still improving. Gunnar, do you have any secrets to offer us? Anything that you think is an essential ingredient? And not to put you directly on the spot. Anyone? Okay. Beverly says willpower. Okay.
It's a matter of having the right frame of mind and being able to just keep challenging yourself and just have a good environment to work with.
I love it.
I'm going through some challenges right now that are holding me back, but I have showed steady improvement and, in fact, brain growth that my doctor cannot explain. My neurologist says I'm the most improved patient he's ever had in his entire career, and he can't figure it out.
Those are the types of secrets that we can't keep secret, Gunnar.
Yeah, well, they measured with MRIs about 3 years ago. My hippocampus was at like 28%. My gray matter was at 3%, and my white matter at 1% of my brain functioning. And they didn't know how I was even functioning at the high level I'm at. My cognizance test showed I'm on par with someone else having not had a stroke at the age of 69. I'll be 70 in March.
Yeah.
I have since then improved in one specific area of the brain capacity, and that is the gray matter has increased to 11% in the last MRIs from 3%. And he said, well, that's just a statistical anomaly. But I don't think there's anything but showing an improvement in cognizance from one test to the other test a couple of years apart. So I see definite improvements, and I don't see an end to it at this point, except for the condition that I'm currently in. I'm having a little anxiety paralysis right now. Some issues going on.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk with you about that offline too, Gunnar. Thank you for unmuting and sharing that story. What we're seeing here, and I'm sure you guys are seeing the same thing in chat, is that people are saying, it takes belief. It takes motivation. I heard willpower. I hear, perseverance. And so I see people that are echoing all of those things. Let me tell you, we know it actually takes motivation, as you have all stated. It does take challenge, though. If your brain isn't challenged, it's not going to get better. In addition, it takes an opportunity to see that you're improving. So that's going to get to a nice message that I want all of you to hear now, and we'll reiterate a little bit later. You need to be able to see the improvements, and a critical function and role of those rehabilitation therapists and professionals is that they can prove to you that their work is making a difference with some accountable changes. So, we need challenges, and I'm going to write that challenge, and I'm sure you guys can see that on my screen. We need challenge. We need a stimulus. We can benefit from repetitions. It takes some intensity, so we need to actually work hard. What you guys already said, motivation, etc., all those things are absolutely true. But remember, we need measurements. Because the human that is working hard, that's challenged, needs to see that their labors are garnering fruits. We need to see the fruits of our labor. So let's move on there. You've done an exceptional job answering that. Let's take a look now. What actually happens in the brain as you recover? Gunnar gave us some nice insights. He said that 3 years ago, 3% of his gray matter was working, and now it's 11% of his gray matter. And we know that when we make new connections in the brain, that the gray matter, which is actually just the neurons, that's the cells of the brain. When those cells make new connections, we can store more information. How to move my left arm, how to swallow, how to move my eyes to the left, how to remember something. Anything that you could learn right now, when you learn something new, is accomplished only by connecting one neuron with a neuron that it never used to be connected with. So let's try something here. Keith, what's your middle name?
Wayne.
Wayne. Now, those of you that didn't know Keith's middle name is Wayne, I'm going to ask you to try to remember it for the next 20 minutes of time that I'm going to present to you. And if you can remember that, you've made a new connection in your brain. You're thinking to yourself, Keith Wayne Taylor. All right? And however that works for you to remember that, whether you think of someone else you know as Wayne, you consider some memory chunks that you've got about John Wayne, and whatever the case may be, you want to try to see if you can challenge yourself to make a new connection. All new connections are new learning. All new learning is neuroplasticity. What does that word mean? Neuroplasticity means brain is malleable, changeable, moldable. Plastic means it can be reformed and reshaped. So it's modifiable. What does it take? Well, what did we just talk about? You guys help me summarize that. New connections form in response to what? Challenges with success, more vigorous exercise. You saw me state intensity and consistency or repetitions. So we need to be willing to work hard toward a meaningful goal. We should not be successful every single time we try it. Why? Why is it beneficial for us to try something and make an error in therapy? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I'm going to go back up to the chat and see what else I've missed since I was last up there. Okay, you guys you got the, Keith Wayne. We got some SAO Batman. Jim Patterson's quick on the draw there. Gunners with the Wayne's World. All right, that's good. All right, so now help me understand, when we look at this, what do you see here? Challenges with success. Why is it important to make an error in your efforts to get better? This is a tough question. Oh, here we've got an answer. Okay, Alicia says you learn from errors. That's correct. Now, the brain, if it continues to get every single answer correct and every time you try, there you go, Alicia, good. You got to celebrate that. You learn from your mistakes. If I were to shoot a basket from half court and I made it every single time, regardless of how I threw the ball, do you think that I would continue to try to get my shot perfected? Some of you have been out on the driving range in golf. And do you think that every time you shot from a tee in the competition playing a round of golf, if every time you shot, no matter what club you chose, no matter how far away the hole was, you shot and you made it into the hole, would golf soon become boring to you? Every single time you're going to hit, you know the result. As a matter of fact, folks, it's the anticipation of success that elevates a very tasty chemical in our brain called dopamine. A lot of people think it's when we pull that slot machine arm and all those coins rush out that that's dopamine. As a matter of fact, we've learned just over the past 6 years that it's the anticipation of success that causes you to want to put another quarter in. And yes, you'll get some dopamine when the slot machine rings out. But think about this. If you've already prepared your dinner reservations for tonight, or maybe you have leftovers from a great meal last night, I can get your brain to release dopamine just thinking about the meal that you've got ahead, and you're not tasting it right now. Anticipation, the opportunity to say, my work devoted might result in more improvements. I can visualize myself doing this. Oh, that trip I'm going to take with my grandchildren to Disneyland. You're already increasing your brain's excitability about that, and you have not accessed or experienced any of that yet. So it is the pursuit, it is the anticipation, and it is also the reward. So when the brain gets dopamine, the brain is fertilized to make more new connections. It's rewarded. And it's that reward system that helps to stimulate neuroplasticity. One nerve cell communicating with another one that it never used to communicate. And that's how we know Keith's middle name. All right. So let's move forward there. Now let's understand the second part of what I told you I want to talk about. What can I and should I expect from a provider or a rehabilitation team? I've listed 8 things here. Let's take our time through these and let's understand each one may not be possible in every situation, but these are an ideal list of which you should expect many of them from your providers. All right, in no specific order, I've just listed first some experience in working with an individual that's recovering from a stroke. Experience is helpful to know how to guide a treatment plan, what I can expect from you, how hard I can work with you. Even if that individual's never worked with you before, experience working with another person that's recovering from a similar condition is helpful. Please understand one thing about stroke. It is the most heterogeneous condition that we have. And what does heterogeneous mean? Well, under one name, we have hundreds of different presentations possible. So it is hetero, different than the norm. So there is no specific, this is a typical person with stroke. One of the things that I hate to hear, and you should not hear this directly from your therapist or from therapists talking to one another. This is a typical stroke patient. If you have an individual that is your therapist who's talking with a student and introducing you to the student, one thing that should never be iterated is, I'd like you to meet Jennifer. She's a typical stroke patient. No such thing. Because of how our brains are all different, where the same exact lesion in a brain is going to be different for 2 different individuals because of the responsibilities for that part of the brain were different slightly from each individual. And most importantly, you are all individuals. The stroke is going to affect you differently because of your experiences before the stroke and also your support systems, your mental fortitude, and etc. afterward. All right, I'm going to go back up to the chat and see what I've missed here. Good. Yes, Marcia, great answer right there. Alicia, you'll catch the recording later. Beverly, Very good, and thank you for the support. All right, now let's look at point number 2. Passion about and knowledge in neuroplasticity. If you're working with an individual this day and age, PT, OT, speech, and they don't know what the term neuroplasticity is, you're either going to educate them or you're going to find another provider. You've got to expect that this day and age, these individuals know that the brain is changeable. All right, so that's number 2. Now, in point number 3, you want to have an individual that's willing to take their experiences, number 1, and what we know can happen with the brain, number 2, and stop everything and listen to your unique story. Your story about your experience in evolving that stroke, in your recovery experience to this point, and equally as important, something about you before you had a stroke. I almost always start every session now. There's few exceptions. My only exceptions are people that can't communicate well with me. I start almost every single session the first time I meet with someone, and I say, let's put your condition aside. Doesn't matter what healthcare condition I'm seeing them for. Let's put your condition aside. Before we start talking about what you and I are seeing here today for your recovery, tell me about you. Because every single time, if you tell me something about you, I'm going to be able to use that to strengthen our experience together. Every single time. All right. Now, I think I heard someone that wanted to maybe make a comment. Does somebody want to unmute and make a comment to that? No. Okay. All right. Point number 4. Measure me and hold us both accountable. The first time you meet any therapist, they should be taking measures that come up with a score, and they need to be willing to hold their treatment accountable so that that score improves in subsequent visits. And it may not be the next visit they remeasure you. It may not be for 2 weeks or 3 weeks later. But we need to recognize that if I'm paying my copay and I'm spending my time and I am giving you my effort to attend at the frequency that you're suggesting, show me the improvements. All right? Any of us as good customers should be able to expect that. Number 5, challenge me therapeutically. What does that mean? That means those errors, some success mixed in. But don't just challenge me to a point that everything is intense and impossible and without hope. Intensity is great. Success is great. We don't need exclusive opportunities of each. Not everything has to be intense. Not everything has to be successful. We need a balance and a blend so that it's just intense enough that I'm successful part of the time. That's the only way it's going to be therapeutic. A brain that doesn't see itself winning is a brain that loses hope. Go back to that. Either the driving range, I hit the ball into the hole every time. The free throw, I shoot the ball in the basket every time. And the reverse is true also. If I swang at a ball sitting on a golf tee 115 times in a row and didn't touch the golf ball once, I should be giving up. Don't make it impossible for me. Point number 6, give me things to do away from therapy. That doesn't mean overload me. That doesn't mean because I'm in therapy, it's now my entire life and 24/7. But that therapist needs to be astute enough to be able to look at you, measure you, hear about you, and figure out what are a couple of small activities that they can do that will benefit our therapy time. All right, point number 7. Advance my treatment as I make improvements. Don't just do the same thing with me every time I come in. And that comes along with advancing our expectations. And then finally, when you're communicating with my insurance company, my physician, my caregivers, other therapists, be an advocate for me. That's what you should expect from a provider or a rehabilitation team. And again, I'm going to send these slides over to Keith. So if you would like them, you can repurpose them and have them. Don't feel like you need to take notes. That advocate for me should not be lost. All right, so here we go. Ralph says, my most successful therapists I've had were because it was a personal and not a clinical relationship. Make a connection. And Steve says, yet we have similarities and can support each other. Yes, that's exactly right. And added on, we need hope to be motivated to keep trying. Neuroplasticity gives me hope. Setting a goal gives me hope. And really, Steve, that's brilliant too. That gives us an opportunity to do something that's natural for human beings, and that's to gamify. Did I make my goal? Am I getting closer to my goal? You know, all of you sat in a back seat of a car. Are we there yet? Are we getting closer? We're making progress. That's a very human tendency. All right, let's move on to the next slide. In the next topic that we've got here, we want to consider, is all exercise, is all movement, is all physical activity the same? And if so, why and when do I need a therapist? Well, some of the most skilled individuals, if they're using their skills to your advantage, will be therapists that can measure you for a 6-minute walk test, a timed up and go test, a 9-hole peg test, a 4-square step test, a balance test with you standing still, timing you in your efforts to get yourself dressed. The ability to be able to understand what measure is appropriate for me, take that measure, find out how to create a plan to help me elevate my skills, and then remeasure me. Part of the reason we seek out professional help is for measurement. Point number 2, expertise in neuroplasticity. The leading professionals that should be the most familiar, not only with what the brain changes, but how to make it change, should be therapists. Physicians, neurologists should know what are the conditions medically that make it optimized for this individual to make a change, but they should not be the experts in how to create a set of instructions, a task, an experience, a session to force the brain to change. That should be up to the therapist. So expertise in neuroplasticity may not come from the physicians and should not necessarily be expected from a personal trainer or coach. Point number 3, dosage of intense work. Let's talk about 2 points on that. When we talk about dosage of intensity, remember, I said a couple of slides ago, challenge me therapeutically. Give me a dosage that pushes my brain to change, but leaves me hopeful and makes me measurably better. So, a dosage can be expressed in how challenging is the balance work. As an example, this is not a comprehensive list. If the balance work is challenging, I should feel that I have to work to keep myself steady. Sometimes I should feel like I'm winning and can hold myself against your balance challenge. And sometimes I feel like I might need help from you physically to catch me, or a harness that you're using to surround me. It's got to be challenging enough. So the dosage of intense work may come from the equipment or the skilled hands that's going to protect me as a therapist, because they're going to challenge me enough that I don't succeed every time. And if I'm working on balance, I need some extra help. The second point here is to not only look toward the brain, this is a big point, but to look toward the body for improvements. Because all of us have room to make gains in strength, make gains in endurance. Can my heart work harder? Can my muscles last longer? All of us have room to make improvements at the level of the body, which support our brain's effort to use the body well. If I'm too weak, frail, fatigued too easily, I can have a fully intact brain, that can't function. But you can never find individuals that are too strong, that have too much endurance. And that's where we can find that the brain says, oh, the body's capable of doing this. Let's organize a way to figure out how to improve our movement. Let's move to the next slide. All right. With the next slide, I want to begin to open up the conversation, and I want to reiterate means by which you can contact me. Email, Instagram, website, YouTube. So I'm going to leave this slide up for now, and then I'm going to begin to answer some questions for all of you, and we'll take as much time as we need to with that. I feel like I've left about 15 minutes, and that's what I had tried to leave. So let's see what we have up here in the chat. Gunnar says, I'm diabetic, and when my sugars are too high, it affects my mentality. That's right. Knowing when to be intense and when you're ready to benefit from intensity is part of that too. And Gunnar, that's an exceptional point, because whether it's diabetes or a condition of the heart, a condition of the lungs, we had somebody come on just a few just less than an hour ago, who had logged in and said she was recovering from being ill. And that may not be her best time to participate in rehabilitation and recover. And we all need to know when we are optimized and ready to make changes. All right, so I want to leave this open for you guys now too. Who wants to unmute or ask questions, whatever fashion you'd like?
My left hand is badly constricted and basically not usable. And I've been told by every doctor that there's nothing they can do.
Okay. Now, I think I'm probably not seeing your name on here. Can I ask you your name, please?
Pamela Cass.
Okay, Pamela. All right. So, Pamela, thank you for asking your question. The first thing that I would ask you is, what is something that you would like to be able to do with your hand that you cannot do right now?
I would like to be able to use a walker.
Okay. So, Pamela, are you engaging in any type of rehabilitation yourself right now, formal rehabilitation?
Yes, I'm in physical therapy, and
Okay.
I walk along a bar that supports my right side.
Okay. And so right now, you are hoping to be able to use both hands on a walker rather than using a bar along a wall or a railing. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay. So may I suggest something to you, Pamela?
sure.
I would suggest that you stand next to that very wall with the railing with your therapist, and have a walker in front of you as well, so that you are walking with the one, this is how you'd start, with one hand on that railing as you're currently doing, and the other hand wrapped to, using a flexible ACE wrap, on the other side of the walker. Someone helps you advance the walker, and we ask your brain to do something that any therapist would love, something that's important and meaningful to you. If we start right there, when you are standing and balancing or walking, let's get your hand on there. Let's make your hand and arm a usable, purposeful appendage, and your brain wants it. Your brain's going to seek out extra help. How much help can Pamela's arm give me? I love that. This is one of the things that I use to promote arm recovery all the time with people, because people say, my arm didn't recover after a stroke. The legs always recover better. But in fact, 2 legs are what it takes to walk. We figure out how to function with one arm, and Pamela's right here telling us, I want to use this arm in a purposeful manner. Pamela, I would suggest that. And I'm going to tell you this, if you want to have your therapist use my email address and contact me, I'll guide he or she right through what I'm suggesting to help you out.
Okay. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question. Who else has a question? I'm going to look up in chat. Okay, good. Gunnar is identifying with you and giving you some options too, using neuromuscular electrical stimulation, NMES. And that can be an extremely helpful and evidence-based way to get a hand to open up by using the electrical stimulation on the backside of the forearm. Marcia agrees with that as well. Gunnar says, I stared at my hand for 2 weeks without being able to move it. My walking mechanics continue to improve as well as my leg stamina. Now, on this point, not that we need to spend, and Steve, I'm going to get to your question because that's a great one right there. But we don't want to spend an entire question and answer section just on your arms. But let me tell you that, in fact, electrical stimulation, as well as what I was suggesting for Pamela, put the arm in a purposeful position so it has to protect you. Those are the two strongest things that help the arm recovery. And it's actually going to go back to what Steve was asking about as well. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this back down and close the chat up. So Steve asked, how do I get my sensation to improve? Steve, are you asking about sensation for your leg or your arm, some other body part, or both?
My whole left side.
Okay. All right. So here's the first point. What did I ask Pamela? I said, what's something that you want to do that you currently can't do? Steve, let's start with your leg so that we can pivot off of what I suggested for Pamela. What's something that you want to be able to do that you feel limited in your capacity to do because you can't feel your left leg?
Play tennis.
Okay, good enough. So, Steve, what I want you to try to do is consider stepping out onto that very familiar tennis court, because that's probably something you did before you endured your stroke. Is that right?
Since I was 18.
Okay, this is important to you, and we love motivation. You all know that's one of the main things. So, Steve, I won't pretend to know what your skills are, but I'm going to make a couple suggestions. If you want your sensation to improve, you have to tell your brain, I need that sensation. So here's what you do. You go out to that tennis court and you start off putting your feet close together. If you can stand like that, with your right foot a little bit more rear, and the feet are staggered. Okay? And you stand at that tennis net within reach of the tennis net. So if you needed it, you'd be able to actually reach out and get it. And what you're going to do is this. You're going to put your left hand on the tennis net. And you're going to stand with your feet staggered. And when you're ready to hold that position, the next move you're going to make, Steve, is you're going to close your eyes, because when your brain says, I don't know where I am, give me some idea of where I am, and your body said, hey, my left arm's right here, giving you some information about where you are, it's holding on to the net, then your brain says, oh yeah, I remember you, you're my left hand. Let me recreate that map in my right parietal lobe where my sensation of my left hand is imaged. Because if your stroke has been 6 months, a year, or more later, your brain starts to do something that's very intelligent, and it begins to repurpose that tissue. It says, we're not getting any information from the left hand, so let's not use that anymore, and you begin to lose or prune that information. The next move, and the last thing I'll tell you, Steve, and we can talk offline about this if you want, is then you switch your legs. Then you put the left leg rear and the right leg forward and your left hand on. Now your left leg is in the dominant position, your left arm's in the dominant position, and your brain says, if we don't get information from my left side, we're going to lose our balance. Eyes are closed, left leg rear, left hand on, you got it. And again, I won't know your specific abilities. I'm speaking in generalities. You might need somebody to stand next to you if you're going to stand like that. but we can talk about more details if you need to. Okay?
Thank you.
That's one great way. Make it purposeful.
Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. I'm going to go back up to the chat. I know we're just about out of time here, so let's take a look here. Beverly, since I had my first stroke in 1999, there was no PT. I had to do everything on my own. I learned to talk, walk, and even worked on my doctoral dissertation myself. I found I made the most recovery when I cleaned houses, purposeful, had to earn money, had to be efficient, and wanted to use my whole body. I strengthened my arm by dusting and mopping. I walked everywhere. I climbed stairs. It really made a big difference. Just like the other people that we spoke to. Pam wants to walk and use a walker. Steve wants to be able to play tennis. Beverly wanted to be able to clean houses and earn a gainful income. The biggest thing that a lot of therapists miss, and that's the purpose of why Keith brought me here, a biggest thing that a lot of therapists miss is making the exercise prescription, the activities in therapy, the home exercises, making them meaningful and purposeful so that this individual sees this is something that makes sense to me as to why it's going to help me get better. I'll close that out then, and we'll close the chat up. All right, so we just have a couple of minutes left. Keith, I want to turn it back over to you unless in case you needed to actually talk with the group. And do you want me to turn the host back over to you?
Either way, I'm telling you, Mike, this was incredible. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I thought to myself, oh my God, oh my gosh. I mean, this is fabulous. You've done an incredible job. And I'm so thankful to have you on here. And there's
You're
a
welcome.
ton that I bet everybody in this room can take away. I'm not joking. Thank you
Don't
so
forget
much.
Don't forget about, let's see, I'm going to actually go here. I'm going to go back up to my screen for just a second and say to those of you that, want more time or more information, don't forget about my email address right there. I'm very happy to continue to help folks. I'll be busy most of the day tomorrow, speaking at Caesar's Palace, which is about 18 miles from my house. So I may not be able to get back to you if you email me in the middle of the day tomorrow, but I only lecture part of the day there on Thursday. Jim Patterson has his hand up. What do you got, Jim?
I just want to tell the group that I was a benefactor of so much of Mike's crazy work. He put me through some unbelievable activities, some of which I didn't at the time believe I had the capability of doing. But the one thing Mike really instilled in me was my understanding that if we demand it of our brain can supply it. And then it becomes a matter of being courageous and being willing to step out and take on those meaningful, purposeful things in your life that you want to do again, and they can happen. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome, Jim. Thanks for your endorsement and the accolades. I appreciate it. But you did all the work, and it's just finding the work that the individual is capable and motivated to do, and you've got to make it about the individual. That's the most important thing that I continue to speak around the world to help therapists realize. Step number one is meet the person. I'll finish with this. First thing I did when I met the 9 people in Europe that I got a chance to work with, 3 different individuals at all 3 lecture sites that I went to, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany, just 3 weeks ago. And the first thing I did with every single individual, even though I needed a translator on 6 of those, is I sat down and learned about the person, and then I leveraged what I learned about that person immediately thereafter. Got to be engaging. Expect that of your therapist. Paige, you've got your hand up.
Hey, Mike, I just wanted to say hi and thank you. I'm an occupational therapist at UCSF for our neuro team there. So
That's great.
Yeah, I already sent you a follow and I look forward to following your work a little bit more closely and then sharing that information. So thank you again. I
Good.
took great notes and definitely will take some of this information into practice with me.
That's
Oh,
great. Paige,
love
I
it.
appreciate that. I may be coming your direction. I'm working with Erica right now to
Okay.
possibly have an in-service at UCSF next year.
That would be
So
great.
yeah, just nudge her a little bit and we'll make that happen.
Okay, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Bye.
Yeah.
So, Mike, a couple of quick things.
Yes.
You know what I loved how you took specific items and you called on people, had them bring specific items to you, and you addressed it. And we don't like ever get that. And I just want to say the impact of that was huge. We so appreciate you.
Thank you.
You know, I appreciate you too, Mike.
Yeah, well, it's
Very-
my pleasure, and this won't be the last time that we have an opportunity to interact. I'm very happy to join with you again on another Future Stroke Warrior. So, if you liked what you heard today, and you know somebody wasn't here, that's typically a member of the group, and you see me, come up to your schedule again, and Keith sends an invite out. Please, I'd love to help more people in any way that we can do it.
I love it so much. We are recording this, and I do send it out to the people that want it. So real quick, Mike, if you can hang on for 2 more minutes.
Happy to. Yep, I'm
Okay,
good.
buddy. So real quick, are there any stroke anniversaries? Anybody having a stroke anniversary this month? Ralph has a
Yesterday.
stroke.
Yesterday was 8 years.
8 years yesterday. Right
Yes,
on,
sir.
buddy. You're looking good and you're really showing progress, my friend.
yeah.
Love it. You really are, Ralph. And we appreciate you so much.
Mike, could you give your email address again?
Yeah. So Pamela, it's my first name, Mike, and then it's at MikeStuder.com. And I'll spell that out now. MikeStuder.com. So Mike
Got it.
at MikeStuder.com. Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Very
Thanks so
good.
much. We're
My
gonna
pleasure.
we're
Thank you
gonna
all.
button this up real quick. I just want to say, Mike, it's not a small feat, buddy. We appreciate you so much, and I almost can't even express how awesome of a speaker you are. And not only that, your knowledge level is way up here. I can tell you work your butt off for that, and it gives us hope, a lot of it. And
Yeah.
we
Well,
appreciate you.
I don't become a worldwide speaker, a TED Talk, and an awardee of Best Therapist. I don't become that if it's not for people like you and some of you, the very members that are here. So I just have to say, it's my privilege and pleasure and honor to be here to help all of you in this fashion, because it is through the work that I do with persons recovering from stroke. Without that, I don't have any initials, accolades, world travels, or famous speeches. So it's thank you, but really my thanks back to all of you.
Well, I appreciate you so much, bud. Last thing is the next meeting that we're going to have is going to be an open meeting, and we're going to discuss some different things. I've had some discussion with some other stroke survivors that want to bring up some topics, and so it'll be an open meeting, and we won't have a speaker, but it'll be great. So hope you guys all come. Once again, let's give Mike a big round of applause. I mean, you can see that, Mike. So we so appreciate you, buddy. Thank you again, and everybody have a fantastic week, and we'll talk soon.
Take care. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye.
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 Oops.
How do I get out of here?